Good morning, my Cafecito con Colon colleagues. It's great to have you with us this morning on this beautiful Thursday morning. We've had balloons in New Mexico. We had the moon and the star this morning. I was out so early this morning with my men's group. I got up this morning about 4 o'clock and got with them at about 6 o'clock, and it was beautiful out. So it's going to be another great day in Tierra del Encanto, the land of enchantment. The 47th star on our flag, the state of New Mexico. Good morning, Terry Hiron Gordon. Good to see you. Great to be with you this morning. Great to have Marcus Mims with us, CPA extraordinaire. It's 9:01 and I'm glad you're here, and we will get started with some links and then we will bring Marcus to visit with us for this morning's episode of Cafecito con Colon. I want to give a shout out to Mariachi Vargas playing Café Colon. Viva el mariachi. Viva Nuevo Mexico. All right. Marcus, you doing okay this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here.
You bet. All right, we're going to put up some links this morning, and then we will have a great visit with Marcus J. Mims, CPA, a fantastic friend and a great leader in accountancy in New Mexico. He has served with the New Mexico Society of CPAs. He's been with the AICPA, which is the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and he's just been a great friend to me as I transitioned into the office of the state auditor. I get to work with him on a regular basis, and I am a better man for it, and I'm glad to have him with us this morning. So, yesterday I mentioned that today would be the 75th anniversary of the day that 40,000 people were killed, which ultimately ended up in being about 140,000 people being killed when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. And today is the 75th anniversary, this 6th day of August. And I thought that I would put up some links that you could check out, in particular, as it relates to New Mexico, observing that the Nuclear Museum is going to host a virtual symposium today, and going to be just really very powerful. This Zoom meeting, they called the virtual event, They Changed Our World, the 75th anniversary of World War II and the use of atomic weapons. And it is a virtual symposium. Now let's see here. How come my Facebook page isn't loading? Let's see. If I don't have good connectivity, somebody let me know. But so far it looks good here on my cell phone, but I can't get it to load and put up my links. So I'll put up that link from the Nuclear History Museum, of which, Aleli's been asked to serve on countless boards over the years, but she's always said no, except to the Nuclear History Museum, because she really wanted to make sure that we increased our quality and access to Title I students at that museum, which is so important. And so she's been serving on that board now for probably 6 months, thanks to Abdiel Ramirez for keying my wife in on that. And it's been a real pleasure and honor to support her engagement with that museum. So very cool. Good morning, Dina Frescas, Elizabeth Patricia L. Chavez. Great to see you. Top of the bright hummingbird-filled morning to you as well. Lynn Troyon, thanks for having perfect attendance, and thanks for making my life a brighter and better place. Appreciate you. Rodney Bowe is with us today. And Anik, thank you for coming back. I think I missed you yesterday. I didn't see you, but great to see you this morning. Good morning, Donna Baldini. Good to see you today. And Dr. Lang, thank you for being with us this morning. And Dean Mathewson and all you folks, thanks for coming out this morning. I am stalling and stretching a little bit because I can't get my Facebook page to load so I can put up these links to the Channel 13 story about the Nuclear History Museum, the Smithsonian's piece about the very painful accounts from the survivors of Hiroshima, And I think yesterday I mentioned that the average age of the survivor is 83, but these accounts that the Smithsonian has documented are just unbelievable. It's about 4.5 minutes long. I think you'll appreciate that. And then USA Today always does a very nice broad strokes story. Their story actually indicates that 70,000 people were killed instantly and 140,000 were dead within 5 years thereafter. So I'll post up all these links as soon as my page loads up. And the other thing I wanted to post up today was, I think I spoke last week about this mysterious seeds that are arriving. I got the jewelry here at the house, 2 different packages of jewelry, just an earring that was very mysterious to me. And that was about a month or 6 weeks ago before anybody was talking about it. Now we come to learn that these seeds are sprouting some concerns over biodiversity and potential harm from China. So do not plant those seeds. Whatever you do, do not plant the seeds. They want us to contact the Department of Agriculture and give them that information and give them those seeds. Finally, yesterday they laid JB White to rest, and there's a KOB story here and clip that is pretty powerful. Let's see here. The other clips I'm going to post up as soon as things load up is that I want to point out that the Journal did an interesting story on balloting and the census and things like that, and I'll post that. But I wanted to most importantly communicate to you that the administration has cut back or advanced the deadline, which to me is just un-American. We had until October 31st to get everybody counted in America, which is a constitutional obligation to count every person in America, regardless of background, regardless of affiliation, regardless of status. We have a long history of undercounting people of color and Native people and rural people, people who have delivery issues for their postal service, which of course is an overrepresentation of rural America. The administration has decided to cut that deadline short by 30 days. So please, I know everybody that tunes into Cafecito con Colon has already been to census2020.gov, but we need a call to action. And thank you, Kathy McGill, for really helping me focus on this. Or maybe it was Pam Coleman who is leading the effort in New Mexico. But one of them said to me, look, everybody that listens to Cafecito has already done the census. But what we need them to do is reach out to 5 people who they think are most likely not to have done the census and make sure they do it. We have got to have exponential reach with our viewers on Cafecito con Colon. And every day we get about 1,000 views on this feed. And I know that this morning we have a couple dozen, 3 dozen people with us this morning. Please reach out and encourage people to complete the census. It means a lot to New Mexico. It means a lot in terms of federal dollars to our state that fund everything from infrastructure projects to education projects, so on and so forth. So please, this is hugely important. The tax holiday is this weekend, so don't forget that. If you need to buy school supplies, this weekend is the tax holiday. I'll post a story to that. And then I wanted to post a story about Virgin Galactic's. This is from a couple days ago. I didn't get to post it, but Virgin Galactic uses space tech to create the new supersonic jet. And that's very cool. And then I have been using, as I support local small restaurateurs, I have been placing several orders through Selflane. I didn't realize it was New Mexico based. Very, very cool. Kevin Zhu is the creator of Selflane, and the story is covered today. This morning, 5 o'clock, the story broke. A great little profile about Kevin and Selflane and their work to compete with DoorDash and what's the other big one? Marcus, you know that it's DoorDash. Oh, Grubhub. And so this company here is a local company that is making a difference. And then last but not least, I'm going to post up. There's so much out there about the Beirut explosion. Probably about 150 or more dead, 7 to 10,000 people needing medical attention, 2 blasts, unbelievable. Here is a link to the Optimist Daily that has 4 kind of sites that can be trusted if you want to provide some help, a couple NGOs and a couple other options. So I have still not gotten my Facebook page to load, which is unbelievable. But I want to say thank you to Dr. Roybal for tuning in, and Jim Buhag, my Mero Mero Veterano, and Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. Thank you for coming on this morning. Appreciate you so much. Catherine, thanks for all your suggestions and your feedback and your support. Thanks for making a contribution so that you could get your Cafecito con Colon cup. Those of you that are supporting the Roots Summer Leadership Camp are going to be able to get your cups there. And Pam Castillo, good to see you this morning. Tim Sheehan and Cyrus, thank you for being with us. And Miguel Tipman, thank you for joining me. My Mero Mero Bombero. Miguel, we raised some money yesterday for the IAF 244 and for our first responders and firefighters with Chisholm Trail RV. I know that we facilitated at least a few $100s worth of raffle tickets yesterday. Thank you to Rosella Aaron Chisholm for being such an incredible philanthropist in our community. She's donating a $24,000 trailer. 100% of the proceeds go to nonprofits in Albuquerque, in particular with a focus on our first responders and firefighters. So if you haven't gotten your raffle tickets to win that trailer from Chisholm Trail RV, don't hesitate to reach out to me so I can facilitate your purchase. Those are $25 each and 5 for $100. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to post my links today or not, Marks. I'm sad about that. I just cannot get my Facebook page to load. But I know we're streaming live, and I know that like Ms. McCord is tuned in, and Mandy Altamirano is with us, Elizabeth's with us, Tim. Yes, you can still buy raffle tickets, Tim. Just send me a text. I know you have my cell number, $25 each, and 5 for $100. And yes, Miguel, happy to talk to you about MDA anytime. You know that I promoted our virtual fundraiser, our virtual Fill the Boot campaign for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Those of you that know me well know that I have a huge spot in my heart for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And gene therapy was a dream when my dad was alive before he passed at the young age of 49. And I remember Jerry Lewis talking about it on the telethon. And as a young boy, it just sounded like sci-fi. And now, earlier, a couple of weeks ago, I posted a story about a young boy who actually was the recipient of gene therapy, who is now walking. He had Duchenne muscular dystrophy, not the same strain of muscular. You know, the MDA serves over 40 different types of neuromuscular diseases, and with its research and its work. And Miguel, with our firefighters, our bomberos, they kept my dad alive for a long time when I was a child. Ultimately, I buried him when I was a teenager, and he was 49, but I'm so grateful to the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the legacy of Jerry Lewis and the Labor Day Telethon and the work of so many incredible first responders. I remember Schaefberger, President Schaefberger, the national president, as a kid, seeing him on the telethon giving the huge checks to Jerry Lewis, hundreds of thousands of dollars that was raised by the firefighters. And then fast forward to the last 10 years, and now I've spent a lot of time with President Schaefberger, many events. Thank you to Diego Rincon and the leadership of the IAFF for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with a personal hero of mine. So look, I got to bring our guest of honor on. It is 9:14 or so, and so it is time to introduce my guest of honor, even though I have not been able to get my Facebook page to load, but it's been great talking to you. Just know that I did get your text, Tim. I will work on sending you a link to purchase those online, or I will facilitate getting your feria, your cashola, your pay, and we'll get you those links and those raffle tickets. Hopefully I got some lucky ones yesterday when I gave my money to Rosella Aaron Chisholm. So I'm gonna try one more time to refresh this Facebook page, and it's not gonna work. So we're gonna give up on that today. I'm sorry I won't be able to post these links right now. I'll try and post them later when I'm not streaming, and maybe I'll have better bandwidth. But let me just tell you, Marcus Mims has been somebody I've admired and respected for many, many years. He and his family have crossed paths with mine, I think, for as long as I can remember. And he's just a tremendous leader in accountancy. And I didn't really appreciate the gravity of his presence with Clifton Larson Allen. He came from a Big Four firm before he was CLA. But now that I'm the state auditor of New Mexico, I really understand how large his presence is in a field that he loves so much. Let me just tell you about Marcus. Marcus is another one of those hometown boys that's done phenomenally well. He went to El Dorado High School. He was born and raised in Albuquerque. He's a very proud Eagle and is currently with Clifton Larson Allen LLP. one of our largest international accountancy firms in New Mexico with a tremendous presence. He is the tax principal there at CLA's Albuquerque office, over 26 years of public and private experience in accountancy. And he has been really representing the national accounting firm here in New Mexico with their state practice and their local tax practice. And he helped develop the technical expertise within a multi-state tax practice for CLA. He has a bachelor's degree in accountancy from my alma mater, New Mexico State University. Raise him up. And he's a certified public accountant who's very, very active in our community. And that's what I love most about Marcus, is not only has he taken a deep dive in making a difference in the field of accountancy in New Mexico and increasing the quality of that presence, but he's also taken a deep dive in community service. Let me just tell you a little bit about his community service. He is currently a trustee at the Albuquerque Community Foundation, and that is a passion point of mine when it comes to incredible organizations. Just spoke to my brother Randy Royster this morning very early, and he is so proud to have had Marcus's leadership as a trustee at the Community Foundation. He's a board member at Economic Forum, New Mexico First, the New Mexico Tax Research Institute, and the list goes on and on. He's worked with Meals on Wheels. He's led with the National Atomic Museum Foundation here in Albuquerque, and I know that he would know that today is a significant day because of his work with the Atomic Museum, and just a phenomenal leader. He's respected coast to coast. He's got a special place in my heart too, as being a leader. And I just want to say, Marcus J. Mims, I'm a better man for knowing you, and I'm grateful that you came on Cafecito con Colon. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Check's in the mail.
All right. We like that check. We'll give it to a good nonprofit, maybe the Roots Summer Leadership Foundation. Huh? How about that?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. Hey, Marcus, tell me a little bit more about your journey. You were born and raised in Albuquerque, so you're part of that special community that not only has roots here because they were raised here, but roots from the beginning. And you've become such a point of pride. I know this to be true. You would never say it, but I know you are a source of pride for the Black community here in Albuquerque as being someone who decided to come back home after working for a Big Four and make a difference. And you have done that, my friend. But tell us from your lens, the lens you look through as a very proud Albuquerque Eagle from El Dorado High School. Tell me about your journey.
Thank you, Brian. It's funny that you sort of framed it that way, because growing up, when I was going through high school, and even when I was graduating from college, I never envisioned staying in New Mexico. It was one of those deals where I said, I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to go on to bigger and better things.
I'm out of here.
and I actually did. I actually did leave and moved to California for a brief period, but I came back. And really kind of over the years, I really, it's New Mexico is part of me. Certainly Albuquerque is part of me. I have the chance to travel quite a bit pre-COVID. And every time I leave and come back, there's always a better appreciation of where you come from and where in this community. And this will always be my home, and it's always going to be part of me. Good or bad, we all have things that we have to work on here in our community, but I love dearly.
Sure. We're losing a little bit of bandwidth, so I'm going to turn off my camera on occasion to see if we can let you have all the feed. And I understand I'm being told in the last few days that sometimes that helps when one party has a little bit of a bandwidth issue. If I turn off my camera, that'll help a little bit. And I don't want people to miss a word of what you have to say, because it's an inspiring story. Tell us about growing up here in Albuquerque, being born and raised here, and maybe where'd you start your early education?
Yeah, so when I was, I guess, 7 years old, we moved up into Northeast Heights. I John Baker Elementary School, Hoover Middle School, and ultimately El Dorado High School. It was, you know, growing up here in Albuquerque in the 70s. There weren't a lot of African. There weren't a lot of African here, um, and so you could go days or weeks without seeing another person that looks like you. Just as an example, when I graduated from El Dorado, I think we had somewhere north of 3,500 kids. We were probably either the largest school in the state or second. I think it was between us and Santa Fe at the time. And I think we probably had maybe 20 Black kids on campus at the
What
time.
did you say, Marcus? Just I want to make sure people don't miss that. You were saying that El Dorado, you're cutting in and out a little bit, at least
Okay.
where I can hear. And folks, you can give me some feedback on that. Maybe you hear him perfectly, but I'm having a little bit of trouble. But I understood you to say that at that time, El Dorado, one of the largest high schools in the state of New Mexico, had about 3,500 students there at El Dorado High School. And you were one of about 30 Black men and women that actually graduated from there and went to school there. Is that right?
Correct.
That you could go for weeks or days without seeing
Yeah.
another.
And so now it's gotten a lot better. You see a lot of more Black people have moved to New Mexico. A lot more African American have to Albuquerque, and I think we're starting to see, certainly on the entrepreneurial front, we're starting to see a vibrant business community within the African American, and so that really, I think, is wonderful. But I'd love to see more. I'd love to see more business leaders out in the community, getting involved and becoming known. That's it. I think it only helps New Mexico. So
I think that's right. It's the diversity in our state that gives us the capacity to do more and be more than most states in the union, because most states and most communities are homogenous and we are not.
I think we're fortunate. I don't know that we deal with a lot of the things that some other communities deal with. Having said that, I certainly think we have a lot of things that we could work on. And like I said before, I think that we're starting to see a vibrant community that's in sort of the embryonic stages, and growing. And I hope that continues.
I think that's right. And Marcus, I'm going to ask you to lean in a little bit because you are cutting in and out.
Okay.
But when you come in clearly, it's crystal clear. But then you cut out a little bit, so I'm not sure. And if I was that handsome, I'd put my face as close to the camera as I could. So, you're looking good. Let me just welcome Latanya's here with us, Jason's here with us, and Cyrus is just really glad that you're here this morning. And Rodney says he doesn't want to miss a word. You're cutting in and out. But I will say too that PLC and Lynn Troyon is just so. She's celebrating you for coming back home, and that she, her family came back in the early 90s, and she said that was the best thing that ever happened to her and hers. And she's just celebrating you. A lot of people are inspired by your story, and I'm thrilled that you came back to take a deep dive in the community, because I know I firsthand know how much you enrich this community, whether it's your work with the Community Foundation or in the field of accountancy. You really matter. And I'm hoping you can share with us, what's it like to have been one of 30 kids out of 3,500 students that was Black, and did you bump into not just what we talk about now as being microaggressions or unconscious bias, but I suspect that you had a couple of pinch points there where it was uncomfortable. Could you share
Yeah,
that?
I think that what you end up doing is you end up having two perspectives, or so to speak. So you have the perspective where you operate in at school or at work, and then you have the perspective where you operate at home, or with your real personality, so to speak, and you realize that um, you have to be on, so to speak, when you're at work or at school, um, knowing that there aren't a lot of others that look like you. Um, and so really that's really the sort of the way I kind of grew up, is knowing that I had great friends, wonderful friends, but they didn't necessarily know about me as this black kid in El Dorado, or even throughout my college days or my work days. Um, you realize you almost have to have two faces, if you will, and that's kind of the difficult. And I think a lot of African Americans, particularly in the professional world, sort of operate on, and they know they have to be on when they're at work, and then they have this other persona that is different.
Right. Would you agree that in some ways the whole concept that, and I don't know how I actually would be curious to learn maybe how your parents spoke to you as a young black man in a community where you had single digit representation in terms of the population. Did they talk to you about what I've heard so frequently, which is, look, you're going to have to perform at a higher level. You're going to have to work harder. You're going to have to prove yourself more frequently, whether it be in school or in the workplace. Did you experience that, or did you have a?
I think those conversations are very common, and certainly I can remember having those conversations with my parents, saying that you have to prove yourself, you have to be better. And so that's part of that pressure, is knowing you have to be better, and knowing you have to operate within that world, and whether that world is going to accept you or not. Every a lot of folks a lot of African American, as they grow up, they all can relate to having the talk with their parents. Here's how you do here's how you act with law enforcement. Um, Here's how you're going to have to be when you get out into the world. We've all had that conversation, and so you don't think that conversation um, extraordinary. You just think it's a common thing that happens, because we all, most of us, had that conversation.
When you were younger, when you had that conversation, it just strikes me, and I haven't asked anybody else this question, but it struck me because I was thinking more specifically about my journey. And, I never had that conversation with Rafael about if you get pulled over by an officer. Somehow I thought he had an inherent respect for authority that would have been received well, and that he wouldn't have been under any circumstances of danger by way of law enforcement, or disparate treatment by way of law enforcement. And so my question for you is this, Marcus: when you were having that conversation, or if you've had that conversation with somebody in the next generation, when you heard that, did you realize that you were having that conversation because you're a black man or a black young man, or did you receive it in a way that you thought, all my friends at El Dorado High School are having the same conversation? Like, is it the birds and the bees conversation that we all have in high school, or?
No, I certainly, I can't speak for anybody else, but
Sure.
I certainly had that conversation, knowing that not everybody's having that conversation.
Well, how did that make you feel? I mean, I kind of sense that, because part of the conversation is, look, you're a black man, you've got pigmentation that is going to have you be more likely to be in a negative situation with law enforcement. So I knew that you were going to say that, yes, you knew that was part of it because that's part of the conversation. But help us understand, as a young Black man in high school at El Dorado, how did you receive that? How did you feel about that? I mean, were you angry that that conversation was even happening, or were you hurt, or help us
Um,
headspace?
I think, I don't know that I was angry or hurt. I think you're having that conversation often and frequent, that you just recognize that this is part of how we live. Okay, so um, you might question why we have to have this conversation, or why, um, you know, why this issue is what it is. But ultimately, you realize, I don't know that I ever got angry that I had to have that conversation, or that my parents had to have that conversation. It was just so common that it was just a part of our life, and it was a part of everybody else's life that that looked like me as well. So I think my anger kind of came later when I saw other things, but the very fact of having that,
Marcus, I'm sorry, you cut out just as your anger came later.
as I saw other things in my life, but um, the fact that I was having that conversation, it was it was it was more as common about talking about the birds and the bees and all that kind of stuff. Um, it was part of that, but I knew that every parent, regardless of color, was probably having a conversation about the birds and the bees, but every parent wasn't having the conversation about that.
Right. So tell us about that next step when you realized that things were different, and you had some anger. Do you remember a moment in time when you could share with us to help us better understand your journey?
Um, I don't know that I can point to a specific moment. Um, but as you're growing up, like I said before, go to a school where there's very few students who look like you, and so I think it's changing now. But like I said before, there's very few students who look like you, and so I grew up from a perspective where it felt like I had to understand them rather than them understanding me. Um, and so that's how I sort of operated. Um,
Do you think it's because you didn't think they had the energy, desire, or
I don't know that I don't
understand you?
yeah I don't know that I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
I can't speak to
right, right. So I know that Alfonso was asking me, actually it was Alfred, asking me how many times I've been stopped by the police, I believe is what he was asking me. And I can tell you that when I was growing up, I grew up in Valencia County. And my parents had the flea market. So they knew all of law enforcement. Law enforcement was at the flea market often. And they knew the little redheaded freckle-faced kid that was Ralph and Shelly's son. And so I was stopped a couple times in high school um, for moving violations, and then down at New Mexico State when I used to drive down there, I was stopped a couple times for speeding. But to be honest, I think that even though I've traveled hundreds of thousands of miles in all 33 counties, I kind of drive like a grandpa, and I've never drawn attention to me to be pulled over, and I don't present in a way that draws attention. What I mean by that is that unfortunately, Black women and Black men don't have to be doing something to draw attention. It's just the way they present behind the steering wheel that draws the
that.
attention. And so I know that, I get that. But I can't think of more than 2 times that I've been stopped since I've been a lawyer. And I drive like a grandpa. And now it's worse because I suspect that there's some level of right or wrong. There's probably some level of courtesy afforded me because I have a red license plate. on my car that says State Auditor Number 1, which is issued by the state of New Mexico. So I think that answers your question, Dean Mathewson. No one's asked me that question, so I never thought about it. But I guess
So
you're
I've
just.
had, I
Mark,
have
why
to,
don't you answer that?
and I can honestly say that I've had experiences that have run the gamut. I've had experiences where the, the stop was legitimate and they treated me with respect and courtesy. And I've had, a couple where they stopped and I knew it was a stop because of, what I looked like, not what I did.
And I assume that those also weren't as courteous.
No, they weren't as courteous, but they weren't, so they weren't out of bounds. So they didn't do anything, but neither did I. And you sort of know you sort of get to a point where, even in your interactions with other people, when this interaction isn't on the up and up. And so I knew this stop probably was for a different reason. But it ended up, I went home and he went home. So that ended up being a positive outcome.
Right. Well, I'm glad. I mean, those stories, like you say, run the gamut, right? Across the board. Some don't, many of those stops don't end with a nice story coming out on the back end as you have.
Yeah. And part of it is, I try to my best to, in those cases, de-escalate and make sure that, you're not giving them anything that can be misconstrued. But again, like I said, I've had interactions that have run the gamut. Some of those that are on the negative side, they certainly do stick with you.
Yeah. To help us learn a little bit about your perspective and kind of how you process, maybe individually and with your family and your loved ones. I'm entering my 10th week of amplifying Black voices so that we all can have a better understanding and grasp of what it is to look through the lens of Black men and Black women, particularly in New Mexico. How, and so I'm getting exhausted, right? Like I feel some exhaustion. I feel some sadness. I feel sadness in that it's taken me so long to actually engage with people about their true journey and ask them questions that are more than superficial, even with those like people that watch regularly, like Tommy McKinney and so many of my dearest friends. And I realize that we've always, not that we've steered away from these difficult dialogues, but we've just never tackled them. And so having tackled them now, I find sadness and exhaustion. But it has to pale in comparison to the exhaustion that people in our community who are Black men and women are feeling, not just because of the murder of George Floyd and the 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but because it's work for you to help me be a better man. Like it's work for you to have to share with me, right? Like you've taken an hour out of your day to be with me. You're talking about something that probably isn't fun to talk about. It's not comfortable to talk about. And yet I'm needing to lean on you to help me know better so that I can be better and do better. And so what's this been like for you, Marcus, Marcus J. Mims, CPA, pillar in our community, a trustee of one of the most impactful philanthropic organizations and one of the most respected boards and nonprofits in New Mexico, like bar none, like it is one of the most prestigious and impactful boards and you're there leading. What's it like looking through your lens and having to process the last 100 days since George Floyd's murder?
Well, I think you go through a number of different emotions. So first, the emotion when you see some of those pictures, it's you can't help but be angry. And then can't help but be that anger sort of turns into turns into sadness. That anger turns into a bit of depression. I am certainly encouraged by the response and the, I'm encouraged by the widespread response, and I think anybody with a sense of humanity had to look at some of those videos and really be outraged. But from my perspective, it's really about where do we go from here. I mean, the conversation can continue, but I think I can't speak for anybody else, but we've talked a lot, and so really, what is the next thing? My concern has always been, what do we turn this into? Do we just sort of say, well, we had this national conversation and we dealt with it, or is there something actionable that comes out of this? And that's what I'm hopeful for, because all of this is for naught if nothing tangible comes out of it. Now, we're probably all going to disagree on what that tangible is, but something has to come out of this in order for this to, because the country is, in my mind, devastated right now, and there has to be something on the horizon that brings us all together, and there has to be something that comes out of this that's a tangible good for everybody. If not, then this was a really devastating event that could have provided some positive outcomes for, and we didn't. That's my concern. Seeing something that comes out of this that's tangible, particularly from the law enforcement side, I think is critical.
No, I think that's very well stated, and I too am encouraged with the different numbers and the diversity in the people who are leaning in right now.
Yeah,
I think we haven't seen that in the past, whether they be public policy leaders or whether they be other ethnic groups, other racial groups. I think this is different, and I remember saying early on in my first week after the Mr. Floyd's murder, I remember saying, and I was saying it every day, I was just saying, look, I hope this isn't just a flashpoint. I hope it's a tipping point.
yeah.
And I really do believe in my heart, and you're encouraged, and with the widespread stakeholders who are trying to listen and learn, that in fact, hold on one sec. We're good to go. Thank you. Be well. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
That this is the tipping point, and that unfortunately it took 7 years of bad acts that we all heard about, but unfortunately I'll be so bold to say is that we didn't care about. Like, we heard about it, and then we found a way to marginalize each and every one of those circumstances. Well, he was wearing a hoodie, and he had a cell phone, so it could have looked like a gun. I mean, it was reasonable. And what was he doing out at 3 a.m? Or, well, she had an outstanding warrant, and I mean, we just marginalized every single one of those situations and found a way to justify it and move on.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that people aren't justifying and moving on. That in fact we're saying, help me better understand, Marcus, what it is you've been through over time when I've been failing to listen, and what has the nation been through over the last 400 years? What is the intergenerational psychology that comes along with being a Black boy or a Black girl? What is the psychological baggage that comes with having to have your parents sit down with you and say, look, the people who are supposed to be serving and protecting, you may find that there's disparate treatment because you're going to present with the color of skin you were born with. That's a heavy backpack to carry every day. And I just think that so many of us are getting a better understanding of that historical perspective and the lived experience of people we care about, the way I care about you, the way I care about Tommy, the way I've respected and held up Dean Emeritus Mathewson. I mean, but I still haven't had all this context until now.
Yeah.
So now I can be a better ally. I can be a better accomplice, and engage at a higher level. And I think you're right. What a pity, you know, it would be if we don't make progress. Now, here's what I'll tell you. I am so optimistic. I am so optimistic we're going to make progress. I mean, we've seen little movements in our community. I think the mayor here in Albuquerque rolled out, he was one of the early mayors to roll out a very groundbreaking approach to public safety. There have been some bumps in the road since then. Hopefully we can get that on track. There's been a little investment, in particular in that entrepreneurial space that you talked about. And I'm grateful for Charles, and I'm grateful for Kathy McGill, and I'm grateful for Mike Silva and Chad and you for leaning into, whether it's the African American Greater Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce or whether it's the Albuquerque One Fund. All those things are going to matter, and they're slight progress. Minneapolis setting aside 1% of the budget for the police department, far less than what people and advocates were hoping for, but it's certainly a start. I think it somewhat saddens me, but I'm going to say this to you, is that Marcus, if you lean back at any moment in time from here forward, those public policy leaders, communities across the country, they'll take their foot off the gas, I'm afraid. Like you have to keep pushing even though you're exhausted, even though you're engaged in this way that is a heavy burden. My fear is that the rest of us will take our eye off that prize of progress.
I think that it requires us to, as a community, to consistently hold our leaders accountable and make sure that our leaders are holding those in whether it's law enforcement or any other position that impacts us accountable as well. I completely agree with you. I think as much as we're tired, we can't afford to step back, and we can't afford to sit back and say, okay, let's see how we have to keep pushing, have to keep the pressure on, because that's the only way that we progress and move forward. Otherwise, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I can't say that I'm I'm hugely optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic as a result of all of this reaction. But I will say that optimism is based on the reaction. Now we have to put that reaction into some action.
Right. I think that's exactly right. We have to put that reaction into action. We have to put the reaction into action. Yeah. I got to work on saying that. I like that. The reaction has to lead to an action. And it's what you said earlier, right? It's like, yes, it's good that we're listening, but it gets back to saying, look, I'm going to listen so I can know better and then do better and be better. Well, I got to do the next step too, right? I have to the do better part, and we have to act and move forward. It's great to listen, but there has to be some tangible outcomes that improve the journey of our sisters and brothers in our community that are no longer willing, nor should they be, who are no longer willing to be invisible, who are no longer willing to allow a community to ignore the circumstances in which they find themselves every single day carrying that heavy backpack. And for me, and for my part, I've tried to be a good ally over the years. And I've engaged deeply with the African American community. And people have said, why are you so passionate about that community, even before this? And I've come to believe that in some way it must be, my Puerto Rican background. If you go back to Puerto Rico and the native people of Puerto Rico, they're black. I mean, they just were. And my dad presented with dark complexion. And my dad, I grew up looking through a lens of having to go home and ask my parents, what's a wetback? And why did my friends call you a mojave, Dad? And that was painful, and I haven't forgotten. And so that's why I do what I do. And you sharing your story is helpful because you're a pillar in our community, and you've been on a journey that very few men of color really get to go on, unfortunately. And we could talk a little bit about that. You and I are focused on leaning in with the New Mexico Society of CPAs to make sure that we're embracing and promoting diversity and inclusion in our profession of accountancy. Because nationwide, it doesn't look good. There's what I talk about, and I just filmed a little piece on this. I talk about we've got a lot of breadth in diversity because we find a lot of Asians and a lot of many nationalities are drawn to the field of accountancy. So we have a lot of breadth, but we don't have representative depth in the profession. And that's what concerns me.
And I agree with you. So, excuse me, just from my personal experience, there aren't a lot of African American accountants or CPAs. And I think the industry has not done as good a job as it can by attracting minority students, attracting students of color. I think when you talk about STEM and technology and even even being an attorney, those fields have done a really good job of sort of marketing those fields to minority students. I don't think the accounting industry has done a really good job of marketing itself to minority students. And I think there's some other structural things that the AICPA has to work on. But just from a personal standpoint, just a personal anecdote. When I became a partner here in this firm, we had a partner meeting where we got all the partners from across the country. We gathered ourselves in a hotel ballroom, a conference room in Las Vegas. I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And as I'm looking across that room, there's about 450 of us. And I was the only Black person in that room. And so that for me was, not only do we not have enough African Americans in the industry, but we don't have enough moving up through the ranks into leadership roles. And so that to me tells me that there's something that we need to do in order to remedy that. So, I think you're spot on. This is an opportunity for the industry, not necessarily. I look at it as an opportunity for the industry.
Well, I think that's right, and we see that in the legal profession too. And Dean Emeritus Mathewson can speak to this, but we have done a better job of increasing our numbers for admissions to law schools. We've done a better job of increasing our numbers of diversity as it relates, and that means gender, ethnic, et cetera, admitting them, graduating them barring them to become attorneys. Where we have a substantial drop off is how many of them become leaders in their firms, how many of them become partners at mid to large size firms in America. And that means
Right.
the same thing as, we have the same issue in the legal profession. Even though we may put a better face on it or a better foot forward, I think the dean would agree with me that when it comes to leadership, when it comes to partnership track, we're still not seeing as many women. We're not seeing as many men of color, women of color in those leadership roles that we should be. And so hopefully we as a profession, I worked on the State Bar's Committee on Diversity for many years. And for me, my passion point was changing the complexion and the gender of the bench. That was my passion point when I was with the New Mexico Hispanic Bar Association. And we did that. We did that in a big way, I think. And there were some real trailblazers on the bench. And we've done better. We still have room for improvement. But so the bench is better in New Mexico, but the bar leadership in terms of firms, I think we still have a long way to go, even in New Mexico, where we've really tried to take a deep dive. And we're talking 20 years, Marcus. Like, I've been practicing almost 20 years now, which is hard to believe. Next fall will be 20 years for me. Tell us as we land this plane, Marcus, and I give you back the rest of your day. What I know you gave some thought, because we've been talking a long time about you coming on, which I appreciate you sticking with me and agreeing to be on. When you thought about being with me, was there a message or two or a thought or two that you wanted to share with 1,000 folks that are going to watch this episode of Cafecito con Colon that I didn't give you a chance to, because I even though I'm here to listen, I end up talking too much. But anything you want to share with us as we kind of wrap it up? What are your final thoughts?
No, I mean, no, I love this community. I love the state. I think it, I want people to be able to
lean in. This could be your most powerful statement. I don't want to lose it, buddy.
No, I excuse me. I want people to be able to see this community the way I see it. I think we have a wonderfully diverse community, and I want to. I just want to see this community grow and be a leader when it comes to moving this issue forward and embracing certain ideals. I think I've been blessed, and I want to see that pass through to others. I want to make sure that this community sustains itself.
Well, that's a good optimistic note, at least certainly a wonderful aspirational goal that hopefully each of us will lean into as we try and create a New Mexico where we have a lot of Marcus J. Mims CPA running around leading this community, because we'll be better for it. I am grateful for his friendship. I'm grateful for his leadership, whether it be at the Albuquerque Community Foundation as a trustee, or whether it just be a leader in accountancy. You matter. You make this community better, and I'm grateful for you. And I'm thankful that you came on this morning with Cafecito con Colon. And I hope to see you soon, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, Marcus J. Mims, CPA, Mr. Extraordinary. Thank you again. Hey, look, folks, we're going to bring some young folks on over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be pretty awesome. We've got the Germain children coming on. I've got Michael Johnson coming on. I've got Mr. Barclay coming on. So next week will be a week of youth, young Black leaders who are going to inspire you. And that may be, after 10 weeks, it may be when I start pivoting a little bit off of amplifying Black voices after having hosted 50 or 60 fantastic New Mexicans to help us all know better so that we could be better and do better. And we will continue to have the guests on of mixed, background, socioeconomic, race, gender, etc. But I think we'll see how it goes after next week as we bring these young people on. I think that's going to be just a cherry on the sundae, because the next generation is powerful. So make it a beautiful day in the land of enchantment. Thank you for being Cafecito colleagues. Thanks for dropping by. Make sure you share this post. Help me get it out there and let everybody know about the superstar Marcus J. Mims, CPA, Clifton Larson Allen, accountant extraordinaire. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks, Brian.
You bet. Bye-bye.